Whenever I set out to review a device, the first thing I ask myself is what does it look like holistically from a helicopter view? Who made it? How was it made? Who is it for? Am I the target market? Are you the target buyer? But the Pixel poses an interesting problem. This is the first time I've ever reviewed a device put out by this OEM, Google. The Pixel is aiming more at the mainstream, at the iOS user base. And you can totally tell by the features they've packed into this thing. A phenomenal camera, incredible best-in-class battery life. It's just a good phone for almost everyone. But those mainstream features mean that it's also going to come with a mainstream price tag. So, what is a phone enthusiast to do? You gotta watch a review on YouTube, don't you? First thing you're going to want to know about the Pixel is there's two models. Everything about the two models is exactly the same, except for two major components. The screen on the Pixel, the baseline Pixel, is a 5-inch screen at 1080. Both displays are AMOLED, thank goodness, but the XL is going to get you a 5.5-inch display at QHD resolution, which is going to get you a PPI all the way up into the 530s, which, if you pre-ordered and you're getting a Daydream VR for free, you're gonna want that higher PPI. Finally, we've got an AMOLED display on both models, big and small. My wife has a Nexus 5X, and I was super bummed that last year she wasn't able to have an AMOLED display, and she was too. Now, Pixel, Pixel XL, AMOLED across the board, everyone's happy. Contrast is good, color reproduction is good. It's a little cooler than I'd like, but overall, phenomenal display, top of the line. The only display that I think might be better is something on a Samsung device, because Samsung knocks their panels out of the park every single time. So unless you're looking at a Note 7, which I don't think you are unless it's exploding in your hand, I have a hard time believing you're gonna find a better display on an Android device this time of year. The other component that is different between the two models is that battery. You're going to get a few extra 100 milliamp hours on the XL than the Pixel, but in terms of actual time, they're about the same, since that Pixel is driving a much smaller display. This is the first Android device I think I've ever been this confident in terms of battery life with. The novelty of being able to go to bed and just not plug your phone in because you don't feel like it is pretty darn freeing.
Wow. Wow. Wow.
I've compared a lot of smartphone cameras, and the two that have been the best for this year, or even end of last year, are the 6P and the S7. The S7's phenomenal at making sure that you get the shot. The software's really fast and really optimized, but it does overprocess quite a bit. In my opinion, the 6P just gets better shots, but because the software just isn't there, you're gonna miss them a lot more frequently. The Pixel splits the difference beautifully between these two archetypes. You're gonna get every shot you wanna get on the Pixel, but it does the work for you to make sure that at least one of those shots is good. More often than not, in direct sunlight, I'm taking shots that are just throwaway shots that wind up being positively gorgeous. The software is finally incredibly fast. Double tapping that power button, starting to take photos. The burst mode is finally just fan-freaking-tastic, which means a lot to me, as I'm sure you know. And since the software is as smart as it is, they can do fun stuff like with HDR+. There are 3 settings for it. There's off, auto, and on. And what auto will do is apply a little bit of HDR+ processing to the image, as opposed to deciding whether or not to use HDR. You're gonna get completely free, for life, we think, storage of all of the photo and video you take on your Pixel at full resolution on Google servers, and that is a huge deal and a ridiculous amount of value that you're gonna get over the next few years. Now, all of this is to say nothing of its video capabilities, which are now incredible as well. Those fantastic optics extend all the way up to 4K video and 240 frames per second slow-mo. But the real killer feature here is that stabilization. Google software is now hooked up directly to the gyroscope, so that any movement that it detects while you're actually taking video, it can compensate for almost immediately. It results in ridiculously smooth video. It does take a little bit of getting used to when you're watching, and a lot more of getting used to when you're shooting video with it, But good golly, Miss Molly, this is just an incredible smartphone camera. I can't wait to shoot a video for you on YouTube solely on this thing. Those software optimizations are on top of an already great spec sheet though too. A Snapdragon 821 under the hood and 4 gigs of RAM means even without any of those, you shouldn't be experiencing many issues from the get-go. But Google has just positively knocked it out of the park, and this is the kind of thing that you can only get from a full-on vertical integration from an OEM. This is why Apple's experiences are so smooth on iOS. It takes such a close-to-the-metal approach to be able to get this kind of a smooth experience. The Pixel is the smoothest device that I have ever used that runs Android, period, end of story. I can't get it to stutter. I can't get it to drop a frame. I've never seen an Android device this smooth before. So we know that underneath the hood, the software is really beautifully optimized. The device runs great, but how about the software that you're actually going to be exposed to? Well, Android 7.1 Nougat is what's on this thing, and 7.1 is important because you're only going to find it here on this device. Of the features that we get out of this exclusive version of Android on the Pixel, I don't really see much happening here in terms of what's exposed to the user to really get me to say, hey, I think you should buy a Pixel just for this feature. Google Assistant is nice and it's fun, but it's an iterative version of Google Now, which we already had and have had since 2012. A few of the other features you're gonna find you've seen from Android Nougat already. That split screen is still here. However, the swipe up gesture doesn't seem to work, but only on the Pixel devices. You're also gonna get things like night light, cutting out that blue bit of spectrum in the color on the screen at night, but I do still find that I prefer to use twilight for that. So overall, there's really just not much here to get me to say, hey, pick up a Pixel because the software features are incredible. They're not. They're just okay. They're kind of boring. Speaking of boring, the device itself isn't exactly a looker either. It feels good in terms of the build quality, but the very subjective nature of a build for me just doesn't land, especially looking at it from the front of the device. I feel like I'm gonna fall asleep looking at this thing. It's halfway between an HTC device and an iPod Touch or iPhone 7, but there's not much personality or character to it. Outside, though, of that glass panel on the back, which at first seemed really out of place, but in practice, I kind of like having a different texture to feel. And I gotta say, I love that the fingerprint scanner is the same material as that glass panel. It's also glass, so it feels really nice to slide from one to the other. A few more small things about the device. That front-facing camera, not the best front facer I've ever seen, but I'm also spoiled rotten when it comes to the HTC 10. The speakers are another part where I think it falls a little bit flat. We have done away with front-facing speakers, so if you're a front-facing speaker diehard, you're not gonna find what you're looking for here. At $649 for the baseline model, you're looking at spending almost $1,000 for the top-of-the-line Mac Daddy at 128 gigs of storage for the Pixel XL. That is a pretty penny if you've bought a device in the last 10 to 12 months. However, anything beyond abso-freaking-lutely, even if you're on an iPhone 5S and iPhone 6 and you're looking for a modern device that's fast, fluid, somewhat future-proof, and a phenomenal experience, the Pixel's got you covered. And with that, I gotta give it a very, very solid buy. Day by day, I find myself falling in love with this device a little bit more and more. But it's not the like form over function feel that I have felt in the past where, I've fallen in love with a particular component like the front-facing camera on the 10 and the build on the 10 or the build on the next bit Robin or the incredible battery life on the Mate 8. I fall in love with this thing almost on the whole, that holistic view that I talked about at the top of the video. The Pixel has seen more adoption over the last few months than the 6P has seen over the last year, and that means something. People are buying this phone despite the higher price tag. It means something to people that you pay that much, that it's equal to the S7 and the iPhone. It's a perception and a marketing issue. And now that we're breaking through that, and we finally got a device that we can wholeheartedly recommend to our friends and our family, which is really what we were asking for, we've got to accept the compromises that go along with it. How it's going to pan out, we don't know for sure, but I would love to hear your comments down below about the Nexus program versus the Pixel program, because we're just not going to know how it's going to pan out until we see what it looks like about a year, 2 years from now, if this device remains supported. I'm thrilled with the device. I think that it's absolutely worth the purchase unless you've got something more recent. But again, let me know down below in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, you can hit that like button. If you want to see more videos like this, gaming stuff, phone stuff, tech nerd stuff, all that stuff, hit that subscribe button. As always, thank you all so much for watching. It really does mean a lot. Be kind to one another, and I'll catch you in the next video.